Tesano here in Accra. It's a big day in Parliament, and just gone by was a debate in the House on the reports of the appointment committee of the nomination of Paul Bafuboni as Chief Justice. But as you may be well aware, it is also a big day in Parliament because Finance Minister Dr. Kassael at Forson is presenting the 2026 budget of the John Dramani Mahama administration, and it's the plan for the fiscal year ending 31st December 2026, and this happens to be a very big one on many fronts. Why? Because it's a budget expected to consolidate the macroeconomic gains we've seen in the country, talk of inflation, which has come down to some single digit at 8%. Also, the currency has appreciated against major trading ones at 30% and more. But if you also look at the growth projections, which have outperformed, projections, you realize that it is also one of the conversations in the country. Now, how do all of these really translate into proper macroeconomic impacts for individual households as well as investors who are watching keenly? Then again, this budget is a big one because it is happening at a time that is going to be the first fiscal blueprint of the John Dramani Mahama administration, again, having won the 2024 general election, spent some 10 months in office, promised a number of big things, policies, reforms, and programs, some of which have already taken off. Others we are yet to see the full implementation. Then again, a budget that goes at the center of Ghana's post-IMF recovery. You know that the current 3-year, $3 billion IMF program is set to expire in May 2026. How is the government putting itself together post-IMF with or without an extension? This is ChannelOne Television, and it's our special and live coverage of the 2026 budget. If you are listening to us on radio, you are live on 97.3 City FM, relevant radio always. I am Ni Latte. Many thanks indeed for choosing us this hour. Stay with us. When we come back, we begin our pre-budget analysis. Hello there, welcome, and thank you so much for staying with us here on ChannelOne Television and 97.3 City FM. It's our live coverage of the 2026 budget in Parliament, and we have a crack panel to help us with the pre-analysis and post-analysis of the presentation. I'll be introducing them to you shortly, but we are live on Facebook, we are live on all our social media platforms. You can join in the conversation. What do you expect in the 2026 budget? Let's hear from you. Let me now come in studio and introduce my guests. I have 6 of them. On my immediate left is the Executive Chairman of the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana, FABAC, John Awunise. Thank you so much for joining us. You are welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well, next to him is Francis Timobo. He is a tax consultant. He's also part of our panel. Francis, thank you. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Next to Francis is Jennifer Moffat. She is country lead of Budget Ghana, a civil society organization. Jennifer, it's good to have you in studio today.
It's good to be here.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Next to Jennifer is Nelson Kuju-Kwagbeji. He is head of finance at Merban Capital, the investment arm of UMB. Nelson, good to have you.
Yeah, good to have you too. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Nelson. And then our final guest in studio is Charles Kusiapia, head of business and economic bureau, the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA.
Pleasure.
Right, thank you so much for joining us. And then on Zoom, joining us all the way from Abu Dhabi in Dubai is Professor Patrick Isumin. He is a professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School, as well as an economist. Prof, good to have you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, sure. We'll be speaking to Prof later on the show, but thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for joining us for the pre-analysis of the 2026 budget. And before we get into the conversation, I just want us to have a general picture and sense of where the economy currently stands. And so, as I mentioned in my introduction, we've seen some level of stability when it comes to a lot of the macroeconomic indicators. Of course, a big conversation is how do these translate into, proper macroeconomic impacts for all of us. And so this year, for example, we saw inflation beginning the year at 23.5%. Now, as we speak, is at 8% as of October. The second single digit we've seen this year. having, trended downwards to 9.4%, the first single digit somewhere in September. And so as you can see on your screen, you will realize that there's been some form of, downward trend when it comes to inflation. And so this is one of the macroeconomic indicators that we've seen trending downwards in the country. Next on the list, you realize that we also have the monetary policy rate, which is the benchmark policy rate by the Bank of Ghana, going down by a cumulative 650 basis points, beginning the year at 27%. And then, of course, we saw a marginal hike to 28%. And then, as we speak, 21.5%. And so that is what we have in the country now. So businesses are also expecting real interest rate to also go down. And if you look at the 2025 macroeconomic indicators that the 2025 budget captured, you realize that for a lot of these indicators, they have outperformed, projection. If you look at real GDP, for example, in the first quarter of this year, 5.1%, second quarter, 6.3%, and the inflation, 11.9%. We are already down to 8%. The primary balance, surplus of 1.5%, and also gross international reserve, not less than, 3 months of import cover. We've outperformed that as well. And so you can see a lot of, changes in the economy. I've already mentioned the 2025 policy rate down from 27% to 21.5% as we speak. And of course, the biggest one of it all, the 2025 end month, forex rate. We saw some level of stability. At the beginning of the year, you could see, the dollar trading at 15.31 to the Ghana cedi per the Bank of Ghana interbank rate. It came up, maintained a stability somewhere in March, down to 14.16 in April. In May, there was a dramatic turnaround to 10.29 Ghana cedis to the dollar. It hovered around the 10 Ghana cedi range, and as we speak, it's still at the 10 Ghana cedi range. And so that is it for the month of October. And so you see that a lot of businesses and even individuals are happy that we've seen some level of stability when it comes to the currency. Now let's look at some of the major promises in the 2025 budget. Talk of the 10% betting tax removal, the 1% e-levy removal, emissions levy VAT on motor vehicle insurance, and also the 1.5% withholding tax on, unprocessed good. This was what the government intended to do. They've done it. And of course, in this 2026 budget, the big elephant in the room is the VAT reforms that we are all looking at. We are eyeing the removal of the COVID-19 levy, the reversal of the decoupling of the, the GET Fund and NHIL levy. There are conversations that Ghana has one of the highest VAT, rates when it comes to the sub-region. When you look at the continental average of 15 to 17%, we are doing cumulatively some 21 to 22%. We are expecting the government to announce some, strong measures to rationalize VAT and also reverse the flat VAT rate as well as, the effective VAT rate reduction. All of this in the box of compliance, whether compliance will be one of the panaceas to, having a sound VAT rate in the country. And so this is one of the biggest things we are looking at in terms of the 2026 budget. I'm sure my guests are already prepared for this particular one because I see all of them nodding. Now let's talk about some of the economic developments we've witnessed in the John Dramani Mahama administration. We've seen Ghana achieving, a staff level agreement in terms of the fifth review of the IMF program. We are expecting some $385 million by December as part of the bailout package. We've also witnessed 3 credit rating upgrades, 2 from S&P and then also 1 from Moody's. Our growth rate very sound. We've been able to, accumulate a lot more of, gold when it comes to our reserve position. We have more than, $12 billion in terms of, gold accumulation in the country as we speak. And so the economy, as we see, is one of, one that is going on a sound footing, at least per the macroeconomic indicators that we have. Talk of, some of the fiscal developments that we've seen in the year, the introduction of the 1 Ghana cedi fuel levy. We've seen public debt also reducing a bit. just in September, I realized that it went up marginally because of the domestic component of it. Single-digit inflation, I've already spoken about it, and also the cedi appreciation, more than 30% against major trading currencies. Revenue expenditure, we saw the 2025 Bank of Ghana September monetary report where we saw some fiscal restraint when it came to revenue as well as also expenditure and our foreign reserves that I've spoken about. And so we are looking at how all of these will feed into the 2026 budget. Again, let's talk about the big ticket policy priorities for the NDC government. The big push infrastructure agenda. We know some allocation has been done there. The 24-hour economy, also the talk of town. We see the Secretariat doing some work. Some businesses have also taken off with the 24-hour economy. We are yet to see, however, the establishment of the Women's Development Bank, which the government says is to expand credit access to women in business. Let's talk of the Digital Jobs Initiative. We've seen the government also rolling out some coding and other initiatives in there. Agriculture for Jobs. Just yesterday, the president launched the Nkoko Nkete project and also some other form of rapid industrialization that we've seen in the country. And so this is where we are as a country. And so if you look at the 2026 budget and if you look at the 2026-2029 medium-term framework that the government has put together, a number of, policy implementation and some key areas that they have actually outlined. So this is just to set the stage for our conversation this afternoon when Finance Minister presents the 2026 budget. What are we likely to see? But let me first begin in studio and go straight to the business community, because if the fundamentals improve, they are going to be the first to feel the impact, and then it will translate down to, we individual households. And so I have Guta here, I have Fabak here. I just want to gauge the mood in terms of their own assessment of the first 10 months of the John Dramani Mahama administration. Really, has the economy turned the corner, as we are made to believe? So let me come to you, Charles.
Yes, good afternoon once again, and thanks for the opportunity. One word to describe the economy, I would call it fantastic experience 2025. I say so, speaking of where we are coming from as businesses, and you've shown the numbers. They were scary. There was so much uncertainties. We saw our capitals dwindling every moment. Cost of borrowing was going high. We almost threw our hands in despair. Here comes a government that says you want to reset the economy, and you decide to be prudent in terms of its fiscal expenditure. It consolidates a lot of expenditure to ensure that at least we reduce crowding out effects and make borrowing much more attractive now. So when you look at the TB rate, it's so down. The banks have no other option than to give their monies to the businesses. So today we are lending or borrowing from the bank in the average between 24-25%, depending on your risk level. Previously it was about 30-35%. So there's some savings for businesses. And when you also want to touch on the forex performance as against local currency, previously, forex was the store of value for every transaction because it's good for us. But yesterday I was having a conversation with someone and he said, don't mention dollar here, I want it in cedis. That's indication of the confidence that people now have on a local currency, that the cedi has become a store of value. And that, of course, has outperformed major trading currencies like the dollar, the pound, the euro. You mentioned a figure of 30%. It goes beyond that. It's doing about 37% outperform that of the foreign currencies. That is savings to us businesses, because we lose our working capital to forex highs. And any moment forex go high, we need to have debt financing to show up the losses. So if there's a gain of 37%, that's a reference of our investment. That means I don't need to go and borrow again. I'm saving almost about 37%. If I have to borrow at that time at 35%, add it to the 37%. I'm almost in the range of 70% lost in terms of cost of borrowing and doing businesses. And that, of course, had brought that kind of respite to businesses. And it has affected key indicators like the policy rate. It has also affected that is of inflation. Inflation has come down to the single digit. That, of course, means that the rate at which price would have increased has slowed down by 8% or so. That, of course, gives the ordinary consumer that disposable income. That gives that consumer that hope that prices will not be increasing that fast. So I don't need to rush to buy items. So I can divert my money to other investment that could probably secure my future. And to us as businesses, there's so much confidence we have now. Ghana, of course, have been earmarked as net import country. But today I can tell you there's a reverse of it. Because we've done export values in the tune of about 17 billion or so against import of about 11 billion. So in terms of international transaction, we have export excess of about 6 billion. That is a good news. When you look at gross international reserve, that gives any investor an idea about a capacity to meet any external payment, to handle any shocks. We're doing the range of $12 billion. If you're a businessman, you see this figure, that confidence level is different from any feeling. So we are very grateful to the government, especially when it was a time for them to intervene in terms of the forest. We had a lot of people complaining, it's not good for the country, it's not healthy, it's not sustainable. And I asked one question: if you have done business, if you lost your capital to forest heights, you might probably will keep quiet for a moment for us to enjoy, because we know how it feels to lose capital. And I can tell you, 2022, most people lost everything. Everything. And that is why banks, you were recording high non-performing loans. The reason is, if I'm going for a facility from a bank, they
but
benchmark.
You know what, Charles? This is by way of preliminary remarks on your assessment. But I just want to give your other
I'm giving you the respite, the importance of that
respite.
It's a big
one, so you really want to unpack that.
Just a minute, I'll be done with it. Okay, you're making me lose thoughts.
I'm sorry.
So when I'm going for a loan from the bank, my first security is my cash flows. And cash flows is based on business activities and the capital that they are injecting. So if I lose part of this capital through forest heights, it means my cash flows will be impaired. And I'm not able to meet the bank loans in terms of repayment. And that's why they were recording non-performing loans. But you could see there's a reverse. There's been some improvement. And that is because our city has been able to outperform forest, and business are saving their capitals.
Yeah, indeed, and if you talk about the non-performing loans coming down from some 24% to now 18% per the Bank of Ghana data. But thank you so much by way of your introduction, Charles. Let me now come to my friend here from FABAC. We know that before the presentation of the budget, they issued a particular statement outlining about 7 key areas that they wanted the finance minister to capture in the budget. But I know that when the budget is being read, or before it's being read, there is this form of engagement between, trading associations, industry players, and what have you. This time around, were you invited? What kind of conversations happened in that particular, engagement?
Thank you very much, and then good afternoon to your viewers and listeners. I would say that, it has been a tradition that each time we are invited over the years, and indeed what I presented is some of those points that we made available to them, that we expect this particular budget to capture some of them, if not all. So we were invited.
I see. But in there, did you make any input, or even let me ask you about your assessment of the first 10 months of the John Dramani Mahama government? Have businesses felt the relief and respite brought on by the sound macroeconomic indicators?
Well, let me say, generally, looking at where we come from, there's a bit of a stability. And in terms of economics, they've stabilized the key macroeconomic indicators. They brought down the temperature of the macroeconomic indicators. As my brother indicated, the inflation and all those kind of stuff have come down. but just that at a point somewhere, somewhere there was a slide. And normally when there's a slide like that, it creates a bit of panic in the business environment, because the Ghana market is a supply market. So when you give your goods out on credit at a certain exchange rate and there is a big drop,
out.
You can't go back to the market and say I have changed. So there was some bit of loss there. But generally the government has stabilized the economy and things looks quite good. Just that the government is not spending. So demand is very low. And I made a statement to that effect. And the governor of the Bank of Ghana also came and confirmed that demand has dropped almost like 70% in the market. People are not buying. And only 2 days ago, even local rice farmers, local maize and all that, they had demonstration in Tamale that their goods are not being bought and all that. So this indicated, these are numbers, fundamentals, very good, beautiful so far, and we hope that we continue in that trend, but there have to be an activity in the country.
So from what you see, what I get to understand is that after that stability, businesses or the private sector must be empowered so that we can feel the real impact of the stability on the ground.
There have to be, and that's what I expect in this particular budget if we get to that. There has to be a certain level of stimulation of demand, because people are not buying, and we are deep in there. You go out and generally, whether it is food products, hardware and all that, and I do a lot of research and talk to people are not buying. And so because of this particular low level of demand, you find out that smuggling has increased, because people are finding different ways to be able to sell below the fair market price so that they can be able to make up some money. And that's a challenge. So the fundamentals look very beautiful and all that, but we need to get people to begin to buy so that businesses can begin to take it to the next level. Otherwise, as it is now, there's a complete squeeze. There's no money in the system. Everybody say no money in the system. As we can see, the government is continue withdrawing money from the system through the treasury bill rates and then all that and auction and all that. So we need to do a lot in this particular coming budget to stimulate demand, to create more economic activity. And that is when we can begin to take it to the next level.
Very well. Let me come to Francis Timoboy, and from where you sit as a tax consultant, if you look at the picture in terms of, revenue expenditure, John is making a point that the government is not spending, something that the government says is not true. They are saying that, contractors are saying that they have not been paid, but government says it is spending. It has made some allocation to some of its, budgetary projects and policies. So if I'm asking you about revenue expenditure, do you feel some form of fiscal restraints or a compression of capital spending, for which reason we are not able to see the effect of the stability in the economy on the individual or even business level?
So to be honest, I think that the team have done well, because before the changeover, you could feel some heat in the system. And they have demonstrated to Ghanaians that they can deliver results. We've seen a number of indicators going down. Inflation is fantastic today. The exchange rate has been very, very stable. In the midst of them scrapping a number of tax handles, you can only be disciplined, because immediately they came, betting tax went away, e-levy went away, and even at the port, custom duties was underperforming because of the appreciation of the cedi. By mid-year, we were down by 1.6 billion. And so if your revenue is not coming, the only disciplined approach will be that you are always careful with your expenditure. And it's not easy for a government to do that, because there's always pressure. We've seen the Nurses Association pushing very hard. And if you are the Minister for Labor, you always cannot sleep because there's pressure. And so for me, the fact that they've been able to contain the pressure and they are not spending according to how much they are getting, and that's what we normally miss. Sometimes we don't have the revenue, but we say, okay, there's pressure, so let's spend. And then we get out of hands. So I think that they've learned their lessons. Lessons has played a very key role. You know, this is a returning government. So they've learned their lessons. IMF may also have whipped them into, line. So overall, I will give them kudos. And again, it sets a very complex platform for this minister going into 2026 because we've seen you doing well. Can you sustain that in 2026, especially when the coach goes away, the IMF, and when they pack their bags and go? Will you continue to be disciplined? We all know that revenue, and for that matter, tax revenue in Ghana is a problem. And in addition, our oil revenue is also not looking promising. I think PIAC has released a report, that we have a problem, no new investment. So that tells you that projects like the free SHS, which largely depends on the oil revenue, they are all at stake. So you consider all these things and then you put yourself together and say, okay, look, money is not coming. What do I do? Do I keep on borrowing and still go back to the debt to GDP ratio high? The only thing they can do is to contain themselves. And I think that is why I really salute them for that. Let's see how they maintain that going into 2026.
All right, thank you so much, Francis Timobo. You are talking more about fiscal discipline going into 2026. We will be getting into the details pretty shortly. But from the civil society side of things, Jennifer Moffat is here from Budget Ghana. I'm sure even before the presentation of this budget, you've been doing some work in the background. Really, what's the sense on the grounds when it comes to, the kinds of, people that you have been engaging when it comes to some of the works you do in terms of pre-budget, a service?
Thank you so much, Nee. When 2025 budget was read, we were here, and I made mention that the 2025 budget was more like a Panadol relief budget because it brought us a lot of relief. And like most of the able gentlemen in this room have said today, we saw a lot of relief coming in, and so people were much, much more expectant. Aside the budget being read, mid-year we saw a lot of improvements in the economy, and everyone was happy. I think when the budget was read, my people in the office, we were shouting because aside the fact that we are Ghanaians, we are also youth, and we saw that most of the projections that government wanted to do would also benefit us. So we were very excited about it. Moving on, we've seen like Guta, Mr. Charles said, Fabag, inflation come back to 8%, as you also mentioned in your submission. And it's exciting seeing all these indicators, see this stabilizing. Everything is looking so good on paper. But the truth is it translating to people's pockets? Is it translating to our everyday life? And that is what we are not seeing. So Mr. John made mention that people are not even purchasing. It's because, yes, we are looking so good on paper, we are doing so well, inflation 8%, but the ordinary Ghanaian, when you tell the person inflation is at 8%, has anything changed in the economy right now? And that's not something that we are really seeing. So we are hoping that 2026 is going to, budget would now, all this good work that is good on paper that we are seeing, we'll now see it in the economy, like real projections, real activity, real movement, and not just that we come and say everything is looking good online, and when we go into the economy, we go into the market, we go into the schools, we go into places, we will not see, we are not feeling it. Moving that even also links to even the unemployment rate, which unemployment in total is around 13%, but youth unemployment is much, much higher at 32%. Is this what is impacting the so-called Galamsey? Is this what is impacting what happened just yesterday when we heard some news, which is over 60,000 people applying, 30,000 qualifying, and you were only looking for 4,000? This is very alarming because these are youth, and it's telling us that something is really wrong. For 60,000 people to apply for a job that is only for 4,000 people. We need to, as a country, stop and really rethink some of these things. So if we are saying, and that's why 2026, I have so much expectation, very high expectation for government, because not only do we want to see all the good work on paper, as civil society, as a young person who is also in Ghana, I want to see real change in the economy where we can really see that we are moving things and not just the main talks as we usually we are doing. And I like it when Mr. Charles mentioned all the beautiful things. I'm like, yeah, this is very, very beautiful, but what is it?
You cannot take it away from what some of the benefit this has been.
Oh yes,
Mr.
we agree.
Mr. Awinyo is here. Price was selling.
No, prices have dropped.
Have dropped.
Yes,
So that was some of the benefits.
We see that. We appreciate it. But then the people are also not purchasing because the money is not there.
So we'll be getting into why that particular situation, and even why, despite all the good things that we've seen on paper in terms of the macroeconomic, indicators, the impact has never been felt. Is it that the 2026 budget is the one going to be the turning point?
Yes.
Because this is, someone will say, the prelims of, the government. But thank you so much, Jennifer, for your insights in terms of the assessment of the government. But let me come to Nelson. Nelson, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon again. Where you sit as a tax person, a finance person, government has rolled out a number of policies. The economic indicators we've all alluded to is, something that have turned to the right direction. Most of them have been outperformed. And so really, if you are to give your sense and paint a picture of how far the government has come, having won the 2024 election, spent some 10 months in office, introduced some policies, what would you say is the government, trump card?
All right, thank you very much. The main challenge that we have had in this country in the past has to do with leadership. We have not gotten the kind of leadership that can transform the fundamentals of this economy. And I was mentioning on another platform that one of the factors that are actually contributing to the gains that we are seeing today is about the tone at the top right from the beginning and the kind of appointment that the president made. You cannot take that away. You cannot disassociate the appointment from the gains that we have seen today. If you look at the ministers that the president appointed, these are people who are well versed in the various sectors that they were assigned to. Before the election, I met the Honorable Finance Minister, and I mean, from the way he spoke, you get to realize that he's really up to the task. He understands the fundamentals of the economy, having been a deputy finance minister before, having served as a ranking member of the finance committee. And so in terms of the economy, he knows where the issues are. If you look at the other ministries too, you realize that they are all doing very well. Now, yes, we all agree on this platform that the economy has seen some level of stability. But I think there are some still risk factors that are still inherent there. One of the reasons why we have enjoyed this relative stability of the cedi has to do with the reserve that we have built. Now, the question is the reserve from which source? Okay, you are building a reserve from commodity exports. And those commodity exports, we don't have control over the prices. And so today, when prices of gold goes down, it means that technically we are going to get a problem. Now, at the beginning of the year, an ounce of gold was at $2,600. Today, it's around $4,100 and something, which is good. Now, we also export crude. Crude is around $74 per barrel. But today, crude is now around $64 per barrel. There is a sharp reduction over there. You also take cocoa. the backbone of our economy. Cocoa was around $11,500, dollars, but currently it has dropped sharply to $6,000. So clearly, it means that when we continue building our reserve on this commodity export, and there is some volatilities in there, we are going to have a serious challenge. And so the reason why my expectation is that going forward, we should focus more on value-added products that we can export, and that is sustainable. We should bring on board more import substitution industries. In fact, we spend almost $400 million every year importing chicken. I was even surprised, $400 million importing chicken into Ghana. So I think that these are some of the areas that government has to concentrate on, most especially the implementation of the 24-hour economy policy, which is intended to capacitate the private sector. Once we are able to shift from this colonial economic model of commodity exportation to a more value-added, export, then we can build a reserve that is sustainable. We can build a reserve that is original, that can help support the city. However, the performance of the indicators, as you rightly mentioned, is not attributable to only the finance ministry alone. The central bank also plays a major role. Now, I always have problem with people who say, why is the central bank intervening in the market, injecting FX into the market? The kind of exchange rate system we have in Ghana is the managed floating exchange rate system, which means that we allow the market to determine the rate, but as and when it is needed, the central bank must intervene. Now, he as a business person and he as a business person, they are only interested in the stability of the exchange rate, because that is what leads to predictability. And so whether Bank of Ghana is intervening on weekly basis or intervening on daily basis, to the extent that their intervention is yielding the right result, I'm sure they will be happy. So I think the stability that we have enjoyed in terms of currency stability, in terms of price stability, the chunk of the praise must be given to the central bank, because they have done exceptionally well.
Very well, Nelson. And so the point you make really is that although the improvement we've seen is as a result of the accumulation of reserve due to the fact that we have gold and crude oil exports, any shakeup in the global commodity pricing will also have an effect on our economy, and so the economy will be more susceptible to some of these things. Again, you mentioned the Bank of Ghana's intervention. Just earlier this week, we heard the Bank of Ghana approving a new forex framework to aid the operations. Talk of transparency, talk of intermediation. We'll be talking about how all of these will help us get a stable framework. But I just want to go on to Zoom now and then speak to Professor Patrick Esuming to also pick his thoughts about the first, 10 months of the John Dramani Mahama administration. Prof, if you can hear me, let's get your assessment of how far the government has come.
Okay, good afternoon, and I've been enjoying the discussion going on in the studio. I think that, I agree with Nelson in terms of, first, the performance has been very, very good. This year has gone extremely well for the Ghanaian economy. If you look at where we started the year from, also doom and gloom, and things were looking very bleak. But, I agree with Nelson that it's a combination of factors that have gone in our favor, as well as some shrewd policy making that has brought the results that we've seen. If you start with the fiscal side, you realize that coming toward the end of last year, even though we are in an IMF program, we still managed to mess up our finances, right? And by the end of the previous review, we saw that we've missed a number of our targets. So I think the new administration coming in, I think it was very good choices, especially with the finance ministry, deciding that first they were going to shift the focus of the consolidation from excessive reliance on revenue through new tax handles, and then focus a little bit more attention on restraining government expenditure. So I think that has been extremely helpful, because you needed to show to the IMF that you are committed to the consolidation. And at the same time, you also needed to bring the program back on stream so that you calm people or the investors who are a little bit concerned about where how we ended the year. So I think that was really good, and you saw that the confidence immediately started spiking up, both consumer and business confidence, and I think that helped. So we got to a great start. Then, but on the fiscal side, I think looking into the 2026, in some sense, the 2025 budget is unique and it's going to be very difficult to replicate.
How so?
In the sense that if you look at how much expenditure restraint we've implemented, it's the kind of thing that you can only do in the first year of administration, where you have a lot of goodwill and people are generally very, give you a lot of leeway, and you can use the first year to try and set up. So perhaps people will pardon you for not implementing some of your flagship programs. So that is how the government is able to restrain the expenditure the way it did. Going into 2026, I think the expectations are going to shift. And that means that people expect that the government will now start really implementing their programs and people begin to see actions happening. And so I think that's why it's very important. It's very fascinating to see exactly how the finance ministry is going to manage this. And I think a big deal is what we are going to do with the VAT reforms and how much potential it has to expand the revenue envelope. Because that's going to determine how much the government can begin to really implement its programs while keeping the consolidation on track. So I think that part is going to be very interesting to see.
Indeed, but I stay with you a while longer because I also want to pick your thoughts on this bit of the economic conversation. You know that the economy expanded, however, the expansion came from the services sector. We didn't see expansion in agri, we didn't see expansion in manufacturing, we didn't even see expansion in industry. And so we also say that the economy is still at risk because we have not been able to expand critical sectors of the economy, for which reason we are not seeing the impact we so desire.
I will agree with that statement for the first quarter. So, but for the second quarter, actually, agri grew extremely strongly. So I think if you look at the second quarter growth numbers, it's more broad-based than we saw last year, than even in the first quarter, even though on both occasions we have performed the expectation. So I actually think that agri actually has done very well, even through the first half of the year. It's done quite well. And the thing is that, especially when you look at first quarter and second quarter agri performance, first quarter and second quarter is really planting and preparation. So when first quarter does well, you know that the rest of the year agri will do well. And that's why
are you contributing to it or you are commenting?
I'm contributing for some key grains. You could really predict that from the first quarter indicator because first quarter is more investment, more or less, when it comes to agri, especially for some of the grains. So because we saw strong growth there, you could tell that agri was going to do well. But I think where I agree with you is that, in some sense, the financial indicators and the monetary indicators have improved faster than the real sector indicators. And I think this is where people begin to complain that, we are not really feeling the kind of improvement in our pocket yet. Because, look, we've seen the inflation, come down to, very quickly into the target band. We've seen the financial sector doing doing very well. But it has yet to translate into the kind of improvement in terms of what will really touch a lot of lives. And I think this is where a big part is that, the flagship programs on the real sector, if you talk about the 24-hour economy, the Nkite and the other things, you realize that the government has spent the first 8 months or 9 months setting up structures, setting up secretariats, So really, not much is happening there. I think that is where there will be a expectation that going to 2026. Okay, let's see the action. The first year we've seen, you stabilize things a little bit, but people expect that we build on it, and so that we begin to see how the stability will translate into, what is happening in people's daily lives, people's personal economies.
Very well.
So I think overall, it's not really the case that especially if you look at the second sector GDP number, the growth was more broad-based. If you compare, the first quarter and the second quarter, the economy is divided into about 20 subsectors. Even though the first quarter growth was way stronger than expected and was the highest we've seen in about 5 years, you realize that there are about 5 or 6 subsectors that contracted. By the time you move to the second quarter, that's not the case. It's only 1 or 2 subsectors that contracted, and almost every sector expanded. Crucially, 2 sectors that have suffered significantly, cocoa and electricity. Those are subsectors that have suffered over the last, the preceding 8 or so quarters. But you begin to see those ones recording positive growth, switching from negative to positive. So I think all of those give you the indication that the growth you've seen for this year is more broad-based, at least in the second quarter. Then the issue about the role of the central bank and the currency and all, well, I think that, from my point of view, we cannot describe the currency since the first quarter as stability. I think what we can describe it as appreciation of the currency, but it's not what stability is. If you check, we started the year relatively stable around the 15. Then, for whatever reason, in March, from the end of March, April, May, we just caused a sharp appreciation. It appeared to stabilize around the 12.5 range. And then suddenly, within a week, somewhere in September, we still allowed the currency to appreciate sharply again. I think that is where, we really have to question what the strategy is. Our reserve position are strong, but as was pointed out, it is not strong because we have changed the structure of the economy. It is strong because we are enjoying the positive side of the volatility of our primary commodity items. So I think, yes, I would have preferred that. Look, if you say the true value should be around 14 or 15, and therefore we keep it there. And then, we make sure that, as the president said, we keep the depreciation appreciation within a small band. That is, for me, that would have been preferable than the kind of appreciation that we've done. That's not to say some people are not going to benefit. People who are into importing, they will be happy. Their businesses will be booming. And, we've seen that because they are also not passing on much of the appreciation to consumers by way of price reductions, their profit, their bottom lines are doing well. But that is coming at the expense of other agents and other sectors of the economy. For instance, you can't say you want to use 24-hour economy to diversify your export base when you cause this kind of appreciation of the currency. It's not consistent. And I think that when a lot of the gains are coming from more or less a windfall, well, in Econ we teach people that when you have a windfall, it's better to save a lot of it than to consume it, because that is an unusual situation. We haven't had the gold price go the rate it has gone. So I think perhaps we could have kept the currency stable rather than this excessive intervention that has caused the currency to appreciate. So I think you can understand why it's a hot topic for debate, because at the end of the day, the economy is extremely import dependent, and when the currency appreciates like that, many people will be happy. But I think we have to look at the bigger strategy. What are we trying to do? Where are we trying to position this economy?
I can really imagine.
Overall, you have to say that the government has done reasonably, has done very, very well.
Well, I see, from what I glean from what Prof is talking about and picking on what some of you have also said. It's more or less like fiscal execution has lagged behind, and so the real test will really come when the government begins embarking on some capital expenditure projects as well as some of its policy initiatives. So I'll be speaking to the economics people here as well as the finance people and the tax people on how that is going to change the narrative going into 2026, and also come to the businesses to look at how the VAT reforms and even the factors of production that they are always saying that it is going up the roof, how it's going to change the game. But Francis, let me come to you. You know, the 2025 monetary policy report by the Bank of Ghana that was released in September, revenue, the expected revenue was 122.9 billion, but government has actually raised 116.2 billion Ghana cedis, if you remember, and this led to a cash basis deficit of some 1.4% of GDP. Expenditure-wise, to the government anticipated 152 billion Ghana cedis. As we speak, some 131.1 billion cedis has been spent. Really, is it because the government is not delivering on, you know, the capital project that I spoke about and the policies, for which reason we are seeing some form of tightening, which a lot of people are saying that the government is not spending? So if we are to see the real test of this government's prospect in terms of the economy, they should spend, they should embark on projects, they should roll out their big policies for us to see.
Of course, in 2026, when the government starts spending, especially the big push, which is the biggest element in their expenditure, we're going to see the real test. But you realize that they just want to be disciplined. Half year, they were down by their revenue target. And one of their biggest revenue line was customs. Like I said, immediately the CD started appreciating. When people import, you know, importers are going to pay smaller because the CD conversion is now in their favor. So that dropped their revenue basket. And in Ghana, our revenue, the direct tax to indirect tax, we do about 54 to 36%. Direct tax consists about 36%, and the indirect tax. So more of our revenue line comes from the indirect tax bit. Again, they had already scrapped the e-levy, so they were losing on that front, and the betting tax has also gone. So all of these things were eating into their revenue basket.
Are you able to tell us exactly how much the government lost in the first 8 months or 10 months, having scrapped e-levy and then the 10%?
E-levy was around, I think, 2.9 billion cedis, and they did it in April to 2nd April. So that money was completely off. Of course, the betting tax was not given. I think betting tax was given as 150 million. So that is not a significant
But the
amount.
1% fuel levy didn't play any role in terms of the revenue?
1% came in late. I think we started in July. Remember, there were that back and forth. Immediately they started, the government said that they should hold on. That was when we were experiencing some, you know, fighting in the Middle East. So effectively, the 1%, which was going to give us around 5.7 billion, came in late. And I think it was even after July. So that did not raise enough revenue for the first half of the year. So when they realized that revenue was not performing, they even attributed it to smuggling and then other, you know, customs mismanagement. So they will step back and say, look, guys, we cannot continue spending when the revenue is not in. And therefore, they held back. Now that things have settled, like you said, 2026 is really going to be the test. Projects are going to be paid for, and immediately you start spending. And that is why they intend to reform the tax system.
But wouldn't the picture be more dire if the tax is revised and also the COVID-19 levy going off, if we are already struggling to raise a lot of revenue because we scrapped e-levy, we scrapped betting tax? If COVID-19 is added to it, are we not going to, you know, squeeze the revenue, you know?
And I think that is a risk that we are hoping that the minister will be able to maneuver. It's really a risk because COVID-19, I think I shared some data with you, between 2026 and 2027, we are throwing away around 10 billion cedis. And the question is, where are we going to get that money from? If You know, property rate in the past has not been performing very well because, I mean, the district assemblies have not been doing enough on the property rate.
What about even oil receipts? We know that that is not even doing well.
Oil receipt is in danger now, especially because our production is dwindling. That's number one. And like Nelson said, these are commodity prices, so you don't bank your hope on them. Anything can change tomorrow. Tomorrow, if Russia decides to go and bomb somewhere, commodity price will just go off. Gold price can also change tomorrow.
So extractive royalties to become better.
Exactly. It's so risky to, you know, rely on such commodity prices to bank your hope. The only thing we can do is to come back and reform our VAT system, which in my perspective, I think that the benefits will take a little longer time. So, like I said, 2026 is a very complex platform for the minister to see how you're going to maneuver through a time when you need to spend to really execute your projects, whilst you are, you know, scrapping some revenue lines, and you don't even know where the money is going to come immediately. We are banking our hopes on the modified taxation and then also the sustained tax education, hoping that when we start educating the people, they will voluntarily comply, you know, start paying the taxes.
But really, will compliance work if the rates are still high?
At least the reform will bring the VAT rate from 22% to 20%, which for my view, I think is good, even though still will remain the highest
in the sub-region.
In the sub-region. But it is better than the experience we had in August 2028. I mean, one of the worst situations we did to our VAT policy was to mix the sales tax with the VAT system in August. And I'm happy that the minister is saying that he's going to, you know, reverse it. But we are now hoping that all of these things will bring in the needed revenue going forward. Other than that, when they start spending, all the metrics that we've spoken about will go back to their worst situation.
I see, yeah. John, you want to make a point in here?
No, yeah. You are talking about those taxes that are removed. Then means that they are throwing away some money, and then how they're going to fill in the gaps and all that. Economic literature does not really confirm that higher taxes bring in higher revenue or in that kind of stuff. Clearly,
that's the lava curve,
exactly.
You know, yeah.
So as much as possible, what I think, and I have always advocated, is the government should look at, number one, we have too many people evading taxes and not complying and order because our tax system is punitive. If you bring in goods from Temaport, through Temaport, and you are paying about 54%, it does not encourage you to bring it in. I would prefer to take, not me, but I said a person would prefer to take those goods, and that is what is happening. Take the goods to Lomé Port, load them in articulated trucks, get to the border, give 10% or 20% of the value of the goods to the custom officer. And that's exactly what is happening now. So, and then bring them in. And when you bring them in, you are miles ahead of the one who brings it through the Temaport. So what will this, as a government or as a finance minister, you have to do is to come out with policy options. And that has to do with removing most of those nuisance unnecessary taxes, make it more attractive, make it more attractive to pass the goods through the normal channel. Because the risk is that when you go through that other evasion and you are caught, you are in serious trouble. Exactly. But then, if you see that your capital will be locked up in the market, if you don't go through that channel, then you have to evade. So I think that if we lower more of the taxes, people will bring in more, people will be able to go through the normal channel, and then more taxes will be paid, and the government will make more revenue.
So which taxes do you want to see go?
Of course, COVID-19 is automatically is gone.
They should have looked at
Number
the
two,
VAT very well.
we have the issue of there's something in the fumigation levy, whatever not. Fumigating what? Containers or whatever not. So container fumigation and all that. What are you fumigating? It's just chop for somebody. Get that thing out. And then we have I've been talking about exercise tax and whatever. Look at the issue of how much revenue is bringing in. What is the benefit? The factories are struggling. Manufacturing sector, go look at the numbers. Manufacturing sector is struggling seriously. And that's what my brother over there talked about, that we are talking about commodities and whatever not. Tomorrow, let gold drop from 4,000 to 2,000. We are in shit. and then all that. But if you begin to build the real sector, get your manufacturing sector working, then you are building and transforming what? The economy. The 24-hour economy thing they are talking about is just, for me, for now, it's just you are using words, but whatever. It's driven by demand. If no demand, nobody will produce 24 hours. I go and open my restaurant. If the customers are sitting down there 24 hours, I will continue. If nobody is there, I will close. So the thing has to do with what? How much money is in the hands of the people. So, and the more people buy, the more we will pay. I have a company that can employ over 100 people. I currently employing 10 people. If I employ 100 people, their PAY will pay it. They will also spend, and then the SNIT and all other things will be paid. So clearly, I think that this government, so far, that's, if I were the finance minister, I would have done what they have done to stabilize, bring down the temperature and all that. But moving forward, we need to be able to stimulate demand than what it is now.
It's still our live coverage of the 2026 budget of the John Dramani Mahama administration. This is ChannelOne television as well as 97.3 CTFM. Still in Parliament, they are debating the report on the nomination of Paul Bafuboni as Chief Justice. As and when the budget proceedings begin, we'll be taking live to the House for some reaction. But in studio, we are having our pre-budget analysis. Businesses are talking. The civil society organizations are also making their points. Tax analysts as well as finance experts are giving us some insight. But let me come to you, Charles, before I get to Nelson and Jennifer, on what form of VAT reforms you are likely to see and how the computation will not have any cascading effect on businesses. But these punitive taxes that we talk about, how much of a squeeze do businesses find themselves in?
Okay, so there are principles when it comes to taxation. The first principle of taxation is self-compliance. And self-compliance is influenced by simplicity, flexibility, and affordability. But with the current regime, our tax system is very complex. So it does not ignite self-compliance. You look at typical example with the VAT system that had flat rates, which is 4%, standard rate effectively at 22%. And you introduce it into an informal sector, which is the FMCG. They sell rice, oil, and by their own design, GRE designs are on 4%. Nelson is on 21 or 22%. We are selling rice, we are selling the same product. You come to the market. Because of the difference in rate, his price will be higher than mine. So you'll be compelled to buy from me. What happens to him? He needs to survive. He might be taking loans from the bank. He has staff to pay. He has rent to pay. So to get a time that he might not even want to even charge the standard rate so that he can sell something for personal feeding. GRA will come. Because there's an evidence of sale, you have to cover that 22% effective rate. Where is he going to get that money from? He did not charge the customer. That means that Nelson has to use part of his working capital to pay for that. What are you doing to his business? As working capitals are depleting, the strength of the business is depleting, the business will collapse. So the current VAT system is not sustainable so far as running an economy and business is concerned. And we've talked about this severally. You see,
why hasn't development changed?
You see, most time they are so much fixated about revenue against sustainability and growth of businesses and affect the growth of the economy. You see, he talked about the Lefebvre curve.
Yeah.
He professed that there's a certain optimal level that you look at tax and revenue. And sometimes it's good to give tax cut to businesses to ensure they ignite those monies into their business to grow. When my business are growing, I'm recording high revenue and profit is high. Won't you charge me CIT? Is it not sustainable? And because of that system, people are under declaring their profits. So you as government, you lose in terms of VAT system, you lose in terms of getting your corporate income tax from businesses. Because you are getting revenue shortfalls, you have to increase it again. And they are more of using the Pareto principle. The few that they can identify, they overburden us. Using 20% of working population to get 80% of your revenue. How is it sustainable? So why don't you cut it off? If you call Prof from Dubai, their VAT rate is 5%. Why would I not pay 5%? And it's standard across. And we are happy saying that standard rate is coming to 20%. What are we doing to ourselves? When someone is doing 5%? You see, it's not by high tax that you pay, you charge, that gives you the revenue, as you rightly said. And when you do the sub-Saharan analysis, we fall short in terms of tax to GDP. Why is this so? Whilst theirs is lower, they are raking in more revenue, whilst ours is going down. Can't we have a different way of appreciating that it is not about high taxes? It's by lowering it, making it flexible, affordable, and simple for everybody to appreciate it. And get people to appreciate that this is why we need taxes. When people are not realizing the benefit of taxes, why will you want them to pay? We are in this country, you heard of ECG issues. What has happened to it? And you are asking that we should pay taxes. Is it not our taxes that they used to run ECG? So it becomes so bad, then they turn around and say the business people don't want to pay taxes. When we see our taxes being mismanaged, and you are telling me what?
Francis is saying that that's a different.
No. The point is that you see, one of the principles of accountability, you must make people get appreciated,
encouraged to pay.
Yes, that is how you get transparent with the people.
So will incentives, for example, work for businesses who are compliant with taxes?
Of course, but it becomes punitive. You decide to do your right thing as a business person. If you want to keep right books, you cannot survive. You can't survive.
So how do you survive?
I am surviving. that is me surviving. And trust me, Reverend talk about the import cost at the port about 50%. If you keep on paying 50% of your face value at the port, how are you going to survive? When we have porous borders across.
Is it because we also operate an open, economy, so everyone can import? So that's why we are seeing some of the.
As liberal as the economy or the market is, there are rules in every market. And today, the sad news is the foreigners are taking over our market. They subvert our market. They will supply to you and get back to the market and compete with you at lower prices. So there must be some regime where there's some level of policies, one, to see what can we do to support businesses. Okay, it is not always about bringing FDIs. It's not enough. Because as I said somewhere else, end of the day, they repatriate all their investments. And when the economy is challenged, they move out their capitals. So the people you supported to rake in more profit and make their country worth a living place, they take all their investment and leave us as slaves here. We don't need to go to IMF again. If we decide to look at the first principle of my people first, how do I support my local people? They are the backbone. That country that you go to look for investors, once upon a time they were like us. But their government made conscious decisions, deliberate decisions that I need to support these people. I need to give them the capacity, the resources, give them tax incentives to grow. When they are growing, they become frontiers of global changes. That should be the kind of conversation our leaders should be having. Not always looking at raising revenue to come on, why?
We're asking them to spend.
We're asking them to spend, like
no,
Francis
you see,
said.
there are so many ways of spending. I'm coming. You see, you adapt what called zero-based budgeting, where you do cost-benefit analysis, and you ensure that where you want to spend, does it have the capacity to repay for that investment? Exactly. I'm coming. And two. You see, I get emotional when it gets to some of these things. But because this is the only hope we have as a country. Okay? If you are a government and you don't want to borrow, your private people are there. There are businesses that have ideal funds, they don't know what to do with their funds. Encourage them through PPA to come and invest in economy. BOT, build, operate, and transfer. Yeah, Rose, give it to the business people. Let them build. You don't have any loans on your what do you call it, balance sheets. Okay? So whilst they are investing in the economy, they get interest in the economy. They realize that if I don't ensure what I'm doing right, get sustained by paying my taxes, I'll lose my investment. That is how we're supposed to have our conversation as a country.
But here's the case: we run a budget that is always in deficit. We've never been able
it's
to
because
have
of
a balance
this
or
kind of this.
surplus in
But
our budget.
if we decide to change the narratives, and that this is how we want to do, after this last IMF, we are not going to any IMF. And then let me borrow.
Is it a possibility?
The former president, Ghana Beyond Aid. It is possible. It is about leadership, and this time let me qualify quality leadership, transformative leadership. That's what we are talking about. It is not just words, but leaders that have generational thinking that I want to do something for my country. We travel outside, we see how other economies have changed. And they were not like us 10, 20 years ago. What has happened?
Compliance has never worked for us. Even broadening the tax base, as we always
But I'm not talking about.
No, I'm
it's
just making
about
a point.
affordability.
I'm
It's
just
about
making a point.
flexibility. It's about simplicity of the tax system that will encourage compliance.
So what would be the
Evident that
ideal-
I pay 1 cedi and this is what that 1 cedi have generated.
What would be the ideal tax system for you as a business? If I'm asking you to put a rate to the VAT that I want to.
Okay, if you no, it's not difficult. If you ask me, VAT is a borrowed policy, and countries that are practicing VAT are countries that have low economic performance. US is not using VAT system, and even if it's UK, it's selective. Okay, so we look at sector by sector. Every sector has certain dynamics and challenges. Then you find solutions to that. If you ask me, FMCGs, rice, oil, where we are, food and beverages, take VAT from it. Make food affordable so we can eat well.
So where would the government get the money?
You see,
Fund.
you see, you think VAT is the only way you can get revenue. But when businesses are growing and they are recording high profit, CIT is there for them. Why you pay is also there. They pay property rates.
And all the other indirect taxes.
No, there are other indirect taxes and all
Yes.
that are in
So
there
VAT is
coming.
not the only
Exactly.
panacea to
So
revenue
it's not that-
generation. And that is collapsing businesses.
Because right now, what basically is happening is that the reality and the truth is that the tax people are the, let me see, we are on TV, but they are the people benefit the most. You go, so people start as young tax officers, within some whatever, they start making money and they are building, they are all that.
It's a really interesting conversation.
No,
Businesses-
can't say that. He's a businessman, you know what he's
No, we
talking
know what we're
about.
talking about.
We've heard a lot from the business side. Let's hear from the policy.
No, this budget
and
for
the
business,
civil
though.
society. I know it's for business.
The economy
but
is for
So
businesses.
it is important
It's
to
for the
make it
people, right.
friendly. No, we see, we are not talking about selfish end. We are looking at together. Like he's rightly said, this is the country that we don't have any other option. We have nowhere to go and then all that. We look forward to the proper development of this country, particularly for the youth, like my sister here talked about. Look at what happened yesterday. That's a complete nightmare, and that tells you the kind of time bomb this country is sitting on. So for us to be able to develop, it has to take what? The private sector to do well. As it is now, people are not recruiting. They are sending people home and all that. Every day we are graduating people from the university to go and go and work. So it has to take the private sector to work. So we are not saying that remove taxes so that people can make more money and carry that money to their homes. We are talking about stimulating demand. If
By
I go,
spending.
no,
right, that
to
is
make it
what-
attractive.
let me-
Okay, so you
let
can
me-
Rev, let Nelson come in and I'll hear from
Respond to this
Jennifer.
issue of government not spending. That statement cannot be entirely true. When you say the government is
I didn't say
No, he's
I'm
making.
saying that demand is low, and Bank of Ghana has confirmed our assertion that demand has dropped.
yes, but from your preliminary comment, I heard you saying that government is not spending the way they are supposed to do.
My
But-
assertion has been that demand is low. As
Okay.
whether they are
Very,
spending or
very,
not
very,
spending,
very
Sure, very
our
well.
demand
That's-
is low.
very low. Okay. But I think in terms of the spending, I think government is actually spending. But the kind of spending that they are doing, I think, is being smart and strategic. In the sense that in the past, we have witnessed what I would call all over the place expenditure. You excuse my language, you hear the buffing in the air, kind of thing. But this time around, you realize that the leakages in the system, as far as the wastages in the system, as far as expenditure is concerned, is being controlled. Now, since this government came to power, we haven't heard that the District Assembly's Common Fund is in arrears. Is that correct? We haven't heard anything to that effect. So Number two, National Health Insurance Scheme. I think they have also been paid. Then salaries have also been paid for public sector workers, isn't it? The only issue that government hasn't done so far, to my expectation, has to do with the payment of arrears to contractors. But that is also understandable, because as a new government, you need to audit the books and know who, is to be paid what. You get it? And recently, I think the audit was done and they have started actually paying. And then also, I was so happy when of late we've not been hearing news of any shortage of food in any secondary school. In the past, it was that serious. When I say serious, I mean very serious. I went to one secondary school in the West Bono region, where the headmaster was calling another headmaster, asking him if he's having sugar, and that they were doing a butter system. Okay, that tells you. And if you're a headmaster, you want to comment on it, they either sack you, they transfer you, or they demote you. But I think these days we have sufficiency of food in our secondary schools. Have you heard of any noise from any school that we don't have sugar, we don't have? So I think the expenditure that the government is doing is strategic. But I also agree with you that going forward, we need to stimulate demand. Because even the 24-hour policy, just as you mentioned, if the demand is not there, you can't produce. But I think the 24-hour economy was more centered on production for exportation, not for domestic consumption per se. Now, if that is the case, then we are moving away from the traditional economic model that we have practiced to a model that is sustainable. You also said that it is the private sector that is the engine of growth. I entirely agree with you, because how many people can the government employ? Somebody just sent me an information that the 60,000 that was cut to 30,000, that should alone tells you, and that is the people who were able to apply. That tells you that the quantum of unemployment in this country is very high. Now, I will basically blame this on the, I will say it's as a result of the free SHS that we have implemented that has actually culminated into these numbers. As I mentioned this morning, the requirement for entering into the security service is not as stringent as that of the academic universities and the rest. And so that alone tells you that in terms of unemployment, we have a serious problem. Reason why, personally, I think that going forward, the conversation should be centered around how to grow the economy, how to create the decent jobs, not the NAPCO type of jobs, but jobs that are decent, jobs that are sustainable,
quality,
and jobs that are quality. That is the only way out. And so that should be our focus as far as this budget is concerned.
Thank you very much, Nelson. I was seeing Jennifer trying to make a point in there. You are making a point of accountability, because there is not, the system or the framework. There is no framework to ensure that people are accountable when it comes to the taxes they collect, for the citizens to get real value for what they pay. It leaves the door ajar. Everyone comes in, they collect everything. You don't know where it ends. People are not getting the social amenities they so desire. Infrastructure project zero. Businesses are not even, breaking even to even talk of maximizing profit. All of these are challenges. Or even employing. They run very constrained budgets, so sometimes they're even compelled to lay off people. How will accountability change the game in terms of our tax administration, having in mind that the government has rolled out a new modified, tax system, expecting to rake in more people, broaden the base, and rake in some revenue?
Thank you, Ni. When it was launched, we were invited to participate, and not just that, also because of our informal sector report that we did our budget, and it's focused on Ghana's untapped economy. Looking at the area that we covered, you realize that most people will not voluntarily pay their taxes. Definitely they wouldn't. And in the survey, we also realized that even if they will pay, it's because they feel like you rightly said, like as a form of punishment, or they are being compelled to. That's the reason why people will pay. And when we started with this sustained national tax education campaign, I was very excited, because then that means that we are going to have a very clear focus as a country, what we want to do. And the fact that we want to bring in more people, especially those in the informal sector, because rightly, 20% cannot take care of everybody, and 80% is not really contributing, only 5% to the coffers. Yes, if we have very low tax handles, very low tax expenditures in there, more people would end up paying. And if we, through either the modified taxation or the new campaign that we want to run, then we are going to have more people joining. Then we are going to have more revenue. So when you were saying that if we take out COVID, if we reduce VAT and all that, how would we really sustain? If we have very clear roadmap, it is possible for us to sustain.
That'll be long term.
It will, but it's possible.
It doesn't come also, so fast like
yes,
that.
I agree. But we are also looking at, that's why it said sustained. It didn't say sharp. They used the word sustained. That's what the key word we are looking at. So it's not just a one-time thing. It's something that is supposed to now develop the culture within everybody to know that paying taxes is normal. But even paying taxes being normal, then you link it to, we are here, a public account committee will sit, and the kind of things you hear. Then ECG will come, the kind of things you hear. OSP will come, the kind of things you are hearing. Attorney General will come, the kind of things you are hearing. And then the next thing you say is, my small money that I'm paying, whether through direct or indirect tax, whether through my phone tax, or those even when you go to your payee and everything, and it's going into the consolidated fund or whichever fund it's going into, and that money, someone is sitting somewhere spending 78 million, like of just this January to October, you are hearing figures, and now it feels huge figures. Now it's feeling like, oh, it's normal, it's small money. And these are monies that, if we are translating it into schools, feeding, all the things that we are looking at that government has priority to do. And it's entering into individuals' pockets. So that's the idea. So why would I want to pay if it's going to enter into individuals' pockets? So the next question is, accountability is very key. The small monies people are paying, we really need to see what is happening to it. The COVID-19 levy, up to now, I've engaged different people. No one has been able to tell me exactly what that money was used to do. Recently, I gave someone at GRA, the person only told me even that COVID levy didn't even give us much revenue. Okay, it didn't give us much revenue. What was the money used for? Then they'll tell you that for that, you have to go to Ministry of Finance. They have the answers, because GRA is just to collect, and then Finance is the one who does the spending. So go to Finance and ask. And up to now, no one has told us what that money was used for. Honorable Minister for Finance should tell us today, when he reads the budget, what that money was used for, because we need to know. And after that, they should scrap it off. If we need to introduce a new tax handle that is going to handle anything else, or the surplus or the deficit that scrapping it is going to create, we rather like that. Tell us what the money was used for, then take it off, and then let's start again. Thank you.
Francis is smiling, and because he's the tax guy here, let me come to why are we hearing the kind of things you are hearing at the OSP level?
She's perfectly right, you see, and if you were at the lunch, the Deputy Minister said that Ghanaians, in fact, voluntary compliance works when taxation is seen as a community investment. So we are all contributing to invest in the road, in the hospital. But then, if you study the expenditure trend that we have, tomorrow we hear this project is funded by Japan, JICA, and then so you ask yourself, where is the money going? So you are right, but you see, if you analyze it directly like that, taxes don't work like that. you cannot sometimes pinpoint to say, okay, this money you paid, your PAYE, this is what it was used for. It loses its identity.
Because it enters into one fund.
Exactly. I agree with you that, look, we need to tackle corruption, which for me is one of the biggest elephants we all have to find bullets to kill. Sometimes you listen to the Public Accounts Committee, and then the sort of thing that goes on really discourages you. In France, we hear, even if you are a prime minister and you get out of, power, they can even imprison you for corruption.
Sarkozy was in prison for taking money from Gaddafi.
But the kind of political system and democracy we have adopted, we will get there, but it is not like tomorrow then we solve it. No, it can't, because even if the opposition, you come and then the next government comes, if you arrest a person, all of them will come and gather, and then making it even difficult for the police to even control. So I agree with you that we need to tackle some of these leakages and the corruption, but it is a bigger thing which will require some time. We all, and it's not going to be only one person. OSP alone cannot fight it. That does not mean that we are going to wait till that is solved before we pay taxes. Otherwise, number one, free SHS cannot go on. We will not be able to pay the police.
We shall allow people to steal from us.
No, we're not saying that.
I'm coming.
The argument is that. The argument is that. I'm coming on.
Corruption, is so attractive. As a government, you must make it so unattractive.
Thank you.
Where you allow the judicial service to work as fast as it could be. 2-3 months, if you put corrupted people in prison, you solve it. It's not long term. So let's not massage it.
No, we are not.
No, please,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is that
it's
not bigger. It is not bigger discussion. It is something wrecking the fiber of this nation.
Yeah.
It's a cancer to the nation, and we cannot treat it like normal malaria.
Thank you.
As early as possible, we should show leadership.
Now the discussion has turned to corruption.
It's one of the areas that corruption is one of the areas.
It's a bane to our development as a country.
Yes. So one of the things we are also not realizing is when people get to see things really happening, like someone. Like we've seen so many things being said. I don't want to raise anything because we are on air, but a lot of things have been said. OSP has come out, AG has come out, PAC has given their own recommendation. But there's no one who is even following to see that at least the PAC one, the PAC one, what exactly is happening? Are we following it through? The recommendation that PAC is making, who is following it through? But we sit for hours. That is even state resources that is being used to sit. You sit for hours, allowances are paid, people will come, some of them will cry, some of them will pretend that they don't know what is even going on. They will say they should bring their records, blah, 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 and that is it. That place is closed. What can we do? So in this regard that we are now saying that we want people to voluntarily pay tax, we want people to see. I always say to this, President Mahama, this is your final term in government. You have nothing to lose. And the real thing, let's, like Mr. Charles is saying, whoever, if we go fast-track courts, let's get the thing known. And we put 1, 2, 3.
Really powerful words you are making.
It will let us know that at least justice can take its course when it comes to people in power.
So that should be done before we pay the taxes.
No.
One of the focus areas, I really want to go on Zoom and bring in Professor Patrick Isioma.
It should be part of the process.
1 second.
Yeah, 1 second, sir.
Okay, my 1 second. Francis, do you feel motivated, or will it be just for you next month, January, to pay higher electricity tariffs in the face of what you saw at Pierre?
I would never encourage that. But you see, they must work in such a way that one should not stop the other.
So I think Francis's point is the timing. We are not going to see all of these changes really taking effect in the short term. Some are for long term. So we should be as much as possible practical about how this can be done. But one of the focus areas of the 2026 budget is restoring good governance and fighting corruption, which the government has said is quite heavy on. But let me go on to Zoom now and see if Prof is still there with us. Prof, where do you stand in this whole taxation, revenue generation conversation? What kind of changes do you expect the finance minister to make in terms of the country's tax and revenue generation regime?
Yeah, thank you. I'm still here, and I'm enjoying the interesting debate going on in the studio. I think that, well, let's see what has been promised. One is removing this, undoing that decoupling, which in some sense resulted in, paying tax on tax. So, we expect that should go. Then, as promised, the COVID-19 levy should go. Then, I hope that it is more or less a uniform tax, a uniform rate, a slightly lower rate, and removing the multiplicity of exemptions that are there. I think, for me, that is a big deal. And in some sense, also removing the discretion given to either the minister or the GRA in giving some of those exemptions. I think that for a country that's in need of the revenue that we need, you really need to come with a strong justification before you are giving that kind of exemption. And I think that perhaps giving the power to one person to grant that kind of exemption is always a recipe for trouble. So that is what I expect. But I think for me, a big deal is on the exemptions. Especially for the current majority that, in the tail end of the last parliament, they fought strongly when the previous administration tried to give exemptions in support of the 1D, 1F. And I expect the same level of consistency. I think during the vetting, the finance minister also did speak a little bit about, his somewhat dislike for the exemption. So I hope that exemptions will go. And then improve more compliance. I think if we up our VAT effort alone and get something close to 80 or 90%, we'll be able to rake in a lot more revenue. But also, so I think making it relatively flat, making it easier, and reducing all those distortions, I think that's a big deal. But then I hope that something happens outside of the VAT. I hope that something happens in line with the property rates. It seems that is. It always seems like that's a low-hanging fruit, but maybe Francis might know more about why exactly it has become so difficult to make progress on that. Because look, the properties, they don't run away, they don't move, they are there, and we spend a lot of money digitizing properties in this country. So you get the sense, you think that one is one of the lower hanging fruits. At this point, we need to get all the revenues we can get, and then also making sure that our systems are talking, because there are people who make a lot of revenue, or they make a lot of income. We can see it from things that they are doing, whether by way of properties or by way of landed properties, non-landed properties. They show up somewhere. They are registering lands, or they are seeking approval to build. They are registering cars. So I think making sure that those systems are talking, so that whatever you do, even if you are not formally declaring income, there is some way of getting to know that you are earning something and then calling upon you to pay. So I think that will help. And so if we do that, and everybody, we broaden the base so that everybody is paying a little bit, then it makes it easier for you to lower the rate, right? But if it's the same people that we have to keep burdening, then we also have to be careful. But the other thing about tax is that I think in Ghana, a lot of the discussion about tax is about revenue. But we forget that tax policy is a strong instrument for promoting development. You can use it to discourage consumption of things that you don't really, that are not desirable. You can also use the tax policy to promote and redirect the economy the way you want. So I think that outside of the revenue, we want to see a clear strategy of what we are trying to do with these tax reforms. What do we want to achieve? and it should be mutually consistent with the other programs that the government are announcing, so that you can. So if you take the COVID-19, some time back we had this benchmark values. At the time when we were trying to do 1D, 1F to promote domestic industrialization, then you say you're going to reduce the what people are paying by way of duty and tax. It's very difficult to understand. So I think we want to know there's a clear strategy. This is what we are trying to do, and it forms or is consistent with broadly the other things that the other program that we've communicated, and that this is the role that the tax policy is going to play. There's the revenue component, but there's also the strategy component. So that's really what I'm expecting to see when the finance minister presents the budget.
Very well, but we have also admitted that there are challenges in broadening the tax net. You've given us an idea of which areas the government can actually look at in terms of raising revenue. But let's talk about the innovation when it comes to collecting tax revenue in the country. We've seen some level of digitization. We've seen a number of, programs and policies to ensure that people voluntarily, pay their taxes, but that is not actually yielding the kind of result that we need. Beyond the tax component of the revenue mobilization you talk about, are there specific areas of the economy you think the government should be turning attention to? As we even talk about, food self-sufficiency, should we be looking at increasing tariffs in areas of, the importation of goods that we can actually produce in the country? I just want you to give us a sense of the other areas that the government can explore in raising revenue to meet its, expenditure, programs.
I think that if you look outside of the tax that we discussed, there's been a lot of discussion about capital flight and a lot of revenue that we lose through how we have organized some of our major export items, including even cocoa, including gold in particular, where we've had cases where there's so much leakage by way of even how it's exported. We've had cases where the recipient of our exports are declaring more imports than we have declared for ourselves. So I think there's that, but that requires a lot more expertise. There's transfer pricing arrangements. There are a lot of things that require a little bit more technical expertise than I'm not sure whether the finance ministry at this stage have that. But when people hear things like SML and all of that, in principle, that is the idea, revenue assurance. But we know, how those arrangements have gone. If you hear the principle of what we are trying to do, making sure that we have a system for tracking the production and the values, so that we can tax properly. It sounds correct and it sounds good, but obviously we've seen how the process has been mismanaged in the past. So right now, I think the appetite for those things will be a little low. But look, I think we have the opportunity through the procurement laws and through other things to bring more people into the formal sector. What we have to understand is that when people stay informal, sometimes it's strategic. It's not that they don't know that they should formalize, they don't know that they should register their businesses. People make decisions rationally to say, I'll stay out of here so that, the taxman don't come and chase me for taxes. But if you look at what we have done with the Ghana Sascar Service by way of the Integrated Business Establishment Survey, we've gone around, collected all this information. We know where the businesses are located. For mobile businesses, maybe it's a little bit different. But for businesses in fixed locations, I think some level of enforcement will help. We have to understand, in the places that people pay taxes, there's a carrot and a stick. Perhaps there's more stick than carrot. If people live in the US, nobody tells them you should file your tax. You don't file and let the time pass, and you see what will happen. So it's not like people really happily or voluntarily want to pay like that. I don't think, it's not an unusual that people don't want to pay tax and that they are Ghanaians. I don't think anybody in here want to pay tax. There will probably be a minority who, on their own, without any punitive action, will pay the tax. But they know the consequences of not paying. So I think we need to do a little bit more by way of the audits or the other space that happens. Then we also have to talk about what's happening in the digital space, the electronic space. The e-levy, in some sense, did a lot of harm to that particular sector because it was such a poorly conceived tax. Everybody agrees that there's a lot of business going on electronically. And those businesses, they have to be made to pay their due. And there are more friendly ways and more intuitive ways of collecting the revenue from those places than what we did with the e-levy. So I think there's still some areas that government can consult and we'll be able to come up with more ingenious ways of collecting taxes. So when you collect from all those sources, then you diversify the sources, then it makes it easier for you to lower the rates. So I think those are areas. The electronic space is definitely something that the government should be considering strongly.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Patrick Esumin. Indeed, really good point to make there, talking about the multiplicity of taxes as well as the exemption and a clear strategy to ensure that you are able to rake in more revenue. But the picture he paints suggests that the country is already overstretched when it comes to taxes. And so in as much as possible, we want to bring in a lot more people into the tax net. We must also be clear in our minds which areas we want to target and what exactly we are going to use the money for. This is still a live coverage of the 2026 budget and policy statement here on Channel One Television as well as 97.3 CTFM. Finance Minister is expected to be in Parliament to present the economic policy of the government for the ensuing year. And this is our pre-budget analysis. I have in studio with me a rep from GUTA, a rep from FABAG. I also have tax and finance as well as economic people in studio with me, plus a representative from civil society organization, all trying to make some input or insight and really what the expectations are as far as this budget is concerned. The conversation has been heavy on revenue mobilization, and I think it's quite interesting given the kind of insights you've all shared. But let's talk about projects that the government really want to do right about now. I'm sure we'll come back to the issue of taxation and revenue again. But programs and policies, big push, 24-hour economy. In the first year of the government, have we really seen that commitment that government really wants to drive this whole 24-hour economy and also massive infrastructure project? And my concern with the kinds of infrastructure projects that the government wants to really roll out is the fact that usually what we tend to see is that a lot of the cost becomes sunk cost. Money is put in there in the first year, if you are lucky in the second year, and then that's it. We are not able to recover the money, and these projects are not able to propel the kind of economic transformation that we really want to see. Big push, 24-hour economy, Ejimara project. I don't know who really wants to take this one on the first call. Nelson, you want to take this one?
So during the initial budget that was presented in March, I think the government made certain allocation to certain strategic priority projects, as they called it. They have the big push, which about 13.8 billion Ghana cedis was allocated for. And one of the challenges that we have had in this country has to do with our road network. In fact, I stay at Adenta, and I've always been saying that the MP for Adenta constituency, if it doesn't take time, the story may be different in 2028. Because the internal roads in Adenta are so bad. They are that bad. And so when you have internal roads in Adenta that are so bad, then when you travel outside the country, you realize that there is a problem. I am from the Volta region, and I am so happy that the road that links Ho to the border town of Aflao is one of the priority projects under the big push, because that is a huge economic corridor for the country. And so the big push, one, it is not only just going to be a normal road, but it's going to open up those communities for business activity to boom. Then also, they have the gold board, which about $279 million, dollars was supposed to be allocated, but we haven't seen that allocation yet. And recently, the minority was questioning the source of fund for the operations of the gold board. We also have the Agric for Economic Transformation, where about 1.5 billion Ghana cedis has been allocated. We have the National Apprenticeship Program, about 300 million Ghana cedis. The sanitary part for female students in primary and secondary schools, which a lot of people actually kick against, but which I personally think as a teacher, when you go to the hinterlands, you see the impact of some of these things, because students don't go to school simply because it is that time of the month. But for me, the biggest of all is the 24-hour economy. And from what we have heard prior to the election, it was supposed to be a policy where we work 3 shifts of 8 hours. But when the program was launched, we all of a sudden heard of the 24-hour economy plus. And the plus segment of the policy has the 8 pillars, which is intended to, 1, incentivize the private sector, capacitate the private sector, for even government intervention along the Volta River corridor. Now, the question is, all these projects that we are looking at, where are we going to get revenue to finance them? Because during the first quarter, when the revised budget was presented, the finance minister made mention that there was a shortfall which the tax expert attributed to the custom duties at the port as a result of the appreciation of the Ghana cedi. So clearly, if we are not able to rake in the needed tax, then it means that all these projects will be financed through debt. And we've all seen in recent time what borrowing, appetite for borrowing has cost to the economy of this country. But a good thing is that lessons have been learned. I'm sure those who are calling for the government to go back to the international bond market to borrow, maybe they are not really understanding the dynamics of those markets. For me, I think that if there should be any borrowing for any project at all, it should be domestic borrowing. It should be bonds that are rated in the Ghana cedi, so that tomorrow, when the exchange rate goes against us, they will not be chasing our cedis. The scanty cedi we have to be paying our exactly. So the big push for me is a big deal, because 1, is going to create a lot of jobs. That is, if it is well implemented. And then 2, it is going to capacitate the private sector. But the thing is that we should be very careful the kind of incentives that we intend to give to the private sector, because in the past, the Tax Exemption Act that was passed, that was supposed to incentivize people for the 1 district, 1 factory, we all saw the results. The incentives were given to cronies of politicians who benefited so much from those tax exemptions. We are not able to, raise enough tax revenue, and the little that we can raise, we are also giving it out in the form of tax exemption. And so we should be very careful how we want to incentivize the private sector for the 24-hour economy policy, because at the end of the day, when the mistakes that we had in the past, where cronies and friends of politicians were given the exemption, then of course the intended objective of the policy may be defeated. So I think that the 24-hour economy should play a major role. But another question that hinges on again is the implementation financing. The government intends to use about $4 billion for the project, but where are we going to get this money from? Reason why I have always maintained a position that we should allow the pension funds in this country to support the private sector, because see, when you go to the Ghana's financial market now, there is virtually no asset to invest in. You go to the stock market where some of the financial stocks are doing well. When you go to the treasury bill, the treasury market, the rates are so low. Reason why for the 4 consecutive auctions that we went, government had under subscription, because most of the institutional investors are not ready to give their money to the government at that low rate. And so I think that for the 24-hour economy, the MPRA should loosen up a bit and allow pension funds. Because, see, every month where we manage pension fund, we receive a lot of, these funds to manage for clients. But the question is, where are you going to put those funds? The stock exchange, fixed deposit, treasury bill, DDP bonds. So you realize that the market itself is illiquid. The market is not deep. And to that extent, I think the pension funds can take advantage of the 24-hour economy, identify opportunities and potentials within that policy so that they can traffic some of their funds. In any case, pension funds are long-term funds. They are not immediately, needed by those who are working. When you go on pension, you go for it. And so when you lock up the fund in long term, then of course the interest that you'll be getting will also be long. So this is my comment on the government priority project. Then finally, I want to link the Akukon Kitinkiti to illegal mining. You see, we have a problem. The problem is that in the past, government has implemented alternative livelihood against, illegal mining. And that has not worked because an illegal miner earns averagely 2,000 cedis in every 3 days. It's a very good investment. They earn about 6,000, 7,000 a week. What business can somebody do and be earning 5,000 cedis every week? You get it? And so because of that, the alternative livelihood programs that were implemented in the past, they've not yielded the desired result. So going forward, I think that in order to move them away from the site, we need to do something substantial. For instance, if you give chickens, the small ones, about 1,000 to one individual and give him all the necessary material, do you think he'll wake up in the morning and go to the illegal site? No. He will be occupied with the, how to feed the chickens and all that. That is the way we can sustain it and then, let people move away from the illegal side. But when you go and tell them that, take this palm tree and plant in the next 2-3 years, how would a person sustain within the short term? And so I think that these initiatives are good. They should be destinated most especially to the youth who can be, in fact, I was just saying that we import about $400 million of chicken every year. So if every youth in this, not every youth in this country, of course, that's not possible, but those who are targeted in the mining areas can be given minimum 5,000, chicks to rear, together with the feed, together with other materials. I think that it will keep them busy and that will prevent them from going to the Galamsey side. Because see, if you go and give them 100 or 20, the next day the gentleman will go to the bush and start digging for gold. So I think that we should target this policy so that the intended objective will be solid. The intended objective will have impact on those who are actually directly working with the policy.
A correlation between Kokon Ketinkete and Galamsey. You have a question for him.
You said the pension fund managers, they should, the argument you were making or the submission, were you saying that they should invest directly into the economy, like direct themselves, or they should find people or opportunities that people are leading and then they can invest in there?
Okay. So per the projection we have made, by the end of the year, we expect cumulative pension funds to hit about 100 billion Ghana cedis. And that's enormous. That's huge. When you have a pension sector with 100 billion Ghana cedis, and you have limited investment opportunities within your market, where would they invest in? You understand? You get it? So our suggestion is that the 24-hour economy is supposed to capacitate the private sector for them to grow. So pension funds should partner with some of these identifiable potential growth-driven companies so that they can inject some of their funds into those companies, so that, they can get returns on their investment.
Just a follow-up question.
So it's more of the individual pension fund managers?
Yes.
Not the government directly?
Yes, no, not government. Of course.
Okay. Because Ghanaians will not be happy with it.
When I say it's risky investing in business.
Something very important.
A moment.
The only option probably will be through capital venture.
That is it. So we develop models.
Yes, exactly. And it's rudiments and it discourages business from patronizing it. business, the only opportunity business have is time.
Yeah.
Okay, and look at the rudimental process you have to go through venture capital. By the time they approve a facility, probably have lost the opportunity. What we want, 24-hour economy, is a good idea. I always say it's fall within the model of supply side economy, where you want to do more production against aggregate demand. Reverend was saying there must be a demand. It's not always a time, there must be a demand before you do production.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to do production against even aggregate demand, especially with the philosophy of the 24 hours to drive exports, all right, where we could see how we can export more to divert some of our crude and gold investment. What I want government to appreciate, we have a prototype, 1D, 1F. It failed, whether we like it or not. It's just because the partners probably didn't understand some of the industries. When government partner with some of the banks didn't understand the dynamics within certain businesses, especially in those production of alcohol, right? So when the bank is supposed to advance maybe 100,000, they'll do 20,000. Meanwhile, I've done my gap analysis. I know I need 100,000 to augment my working capital. But if you give me 20,000, what else will I be doing? So it ends up that they were using even the 20,000 to repay for a longer term facility. So you collapse it. So for me, my proposition was, we've enjoyed COVID-19 levy 1% for a while, which we have gotten used to. Probably could have changed the name, okay, to see how we can use it to raise funds, okay, to support either women's bank.
So you don't want it scrapped anymore?
No. It's an option. Okay, if you are introducing 1% levy somewhere, because I'm looking at sustainability of the project. If you want to rely on maybe the commercial bank, sometimes when they have liquidity problems, they will not be interested in investing in this. And for the commercial banks, of course, they also have their funds to advance to enjoy higher returns on it. So if you are saying, okay, give this money to a businessman at a discount rate, as government, I'll pay for the interest for, they are not comfortable. So we should be looking at options in terms of funding such projects. I said that if funding is not there, it is not a big deal. It's not every business that needs funding from government. Some of them need capacity building. Some of them need market information. Okay, some of them need training for their staff. Some of them need how you can help them structure their businesses. Some of them want to see how they can practice corporate governance. Some want to see how you can give them some level of relief in terms of taxes. That's what some of them are looking for. I would have wished probably we have already identified businesses that are doing well. They should be the low-hanging business government should target for 24-hour economy. You go to Casapreco, they are doing well already. You go to Lawson Herbert, they are doing already. Identify what are your challenges. Because these people are already running the 24-hour economy. They run 3 shifts already. But they need certain kind of support to sustain the growth that they are looking for. Some of them are looking for opportunity to export. Government responsibility to identify companies that they can export to. That is how we're supposed to drive it. Other than that, to be talk, and 4 years will come, and we might not have anything to identify as this is the benefit 24-hour economy, but to us. But the other point is this: since there's production against aggregate demand, it will help inflation to be arrested, because price of items will drop. It will create labor opportunity. All right, so it's a good policy, but I think we have to think through that we should not do the BAU, business as usual approach, where bring your business proposal. The businessman you are asking to bring the business proposal, he doesn't understand it. You ask someone to write business proposal, that might not be related to exactly what he's looking for. So there must be an innovative approach to implementing 24 hours. Engage them, listen to them, and see how best you can help them.
But do you also think that the current tax regime that we find ourselves in, and even the economy that we see, and the kinds of things you do when it comes to production, if things are not changed, then the status quo remains the same, do you think it will be a disincentive to defeat the purpose of the 24-hour economy?
Seriously, and I've said that over and over and written papers on this. In the sense that the biggest challenge of the Ghanaian economy, local production, is high cost of production. That is the biggest challenge. I was the president of the Ghana Rice, the professional body, from 2004 to about 2008. I went around this entire country trying to help boost local rice production. It worked, but did not go far because the local rice was much more higher than, in terms of price, than the imported one. It's still very high. Then you go to the issue of poultry. I have a poultry producer just by my house. The local chicken is tastier, fresher, and very good. I prefer that to the imported chicken. But can I afford that every day for my entire family? If I feed about 10 or more people, how many local birds can I afford in a day to feed them? When the local bird is much expensive than the foreign one. If you produce chicken just by my house and then the bird costs about 120, 130 cedis, about 1.3 kilo or so thereabout, how many can my driver afford that? Can any normal Ghanaian afford that? So the issue is not just about coming out with a 24-hour economy and say you are going to capacitate or whatever not. You have to make the things more reasonable for them to work. If you look at the issue, I have been advocating, I'm still leading the campaign against higher increases in electricity tariffs. If you look at the sub-region, Europe, look at Europe, Africa, Ghana is high up there industrial and commercial tariff rates of power. How can a local factory produce at that high cost and compete with those ones that come from Turkey and all whatever not? Go to the market and you want to buy cables. I mentioned any brand. The local brands, sometimes you look at them more quality, better, and all that, the cable metal or whatever not. Yeah. They look much more better. I prefer to buy that. But when I compare that to a Turkish brand and all that, I prefer to buy the Turkey brand to the other one. The difficulty that the industry have in this country is high cost of production. Until we are able to do that, there's no amount of 24-hour thing that can push anybody to do that, because everything is driven by what? Demand. Beer.
Just for clarity, when businesses say high cost of production, what was that budget line item? Is it always about power or electricity or utility?
Power is the foundation of production of everything, power and water. Electricity, if it's high, and you have to produce, you can't do anything about it. You are producing throughout. Indeed, it's not only high even in the industrial sector. The reason why there's high power theft in this particular country is because electricity tariffs are extremely high. So if people want to avoid it, so they steal. So if you want to push production in this country, make the things more affordable so that those who are producing, all of us can be patriotic enough to buy it. If as a businessman, my friend here, goes to buy local rice or goes to buy locally produced goods to sell, when the consumer comes in, he's not looking at whatever. He's not looking at say that this is foreign and this is this. He's looking at what prices first. And in 2001 and 2000, when I was part of the advisory team of the Honorable late Kwashiga, I told them that, listen, for local rice to succeed in this country, you must make sure that the price is lower. But people refused. So what eventually one day we came out with the idea that government subvention institutions should buy locally produced rice and then and all that. What happened? People now went and they were now buying foreign rice cheap and putting the local rice sacks and then supply because the local rice is expensive. And currently, that is exactly what is happening. If necessary, the security people, they check. The school feeding programs or whatever not, that's exactly what is happening. They go to Togo, go and buy, come and put in local sacks and then supply as locally produced goods. And that's what is happening in the market. So for this budget and beyond, the greatest responsibility that the finance minister should have is to create a budget that will make production meaningful in this country, local production meaningful in this country. Make the business sector more interested so that we can be able to produce, we can be able to sell, and the people can be able to expand.
And that's it. So not to talk about the issue of they want to raise electricity tariffs, let people pay higher tariffs so that they can have power affordable. It's not about affordable power. It's about what? It's not about available power. Power security is what? Power that is what? Not only available, but power that is what? Affordable. That is power security. So if we keep on talking about 24-hour economy, 20 whatever, and all that, it all boils down to the fact that are the goods going to be produced, the that are going to be produced locally, are they going to be affordable or not? Let it be affordable, and nobody would dare advise the importer that to stop importing foreign chicken or rice. Because the consumer doesn't really care. He's looking at the forces of demand and supply. What moves the market?
That's true.
So we also considered how the 24-hour economy will look like at the district level.
Tell me about it.
Because most of the ideas around the 24-hour economy is more like very, very urban. And recently we were in the Oti region. We also had an interaction in the northern region. And like you said, the District Assembly Common Fund allocation has gone. Some of the money is supposed to be just there for 24 hours. Don't touch it until directive comes for you to touch it. And if you are looking at someone being told that they should go and establish a market for 24-hour economy, and you are looking at the environment itself and the fact that they themselves, their own IGF, they are not able to generate more, and you are asking for a 24-hour day, the truth is, does it really make sense in that kind of situation?
What I think is supposed to be like this. Every region has a competitive edge in terms of businesses. When it gets to Ashanti region, there's some business that thrives so well.
Thank you.
Greater Accra, Takrade, your hometown, all right? These are the business government is supposed to identify. It's not really about startups. That's what I'm talking about.
So I agree with you.
Yes.
So then we should have a really clear blueprint.
Very well.
That's what should be one of the key takeaways from this sitting. There should be a very clear a blueprint that is saying that if it's going to be 24 hours, if I'm taking Ashanti region, this is going to be the focal area, and not necessarily maybe to establish a market or to by force establish maybe a new business. It's not necessary. So let's really, the money should be really focused on specific things to be able to boost the economy. But I will also link it to, since today I'm very, very passionate about youth unemployment in Ghana and the fact that a lot of things are happening and a lot of youth are suffering. So whilst we were sitting here and I started the talk around the youth unemployment, I got a lot of messages on my phone. And someone also says that we keep looking at agric anytime it comes to youth unemployment. But one of the places that we are also not looking at is the energy sector for the youth and also the industry, to be able to promote the industry. And these two places has a lot of capacity to be able to employ more people. But unfortunately, these are some of the places that are not being considered. Aside that itself, a lot of youth need technical assistance, they need the capacity building, and they need financial support. And I think Mr. Charles made mention about that in his submission. So in moving forward, beyond 2026, going into 2028, 2030, Agenda 2030, let's ensure that our budgets are very, very targeted and very, very specific. And when, mostly you get to hear in the budget, oh, we are going to, let's say, 260,000 something as allocated for ABCD, and they don't tell you specifically which region. So for accountability to be able to happen, you should be able to track these things. But our budgets are always very open-ended, that tracking of some of these things are not easy. And for our work, that most of the things we do is also around tracking, we also want to see the specific, so that when we are able to say at the end of the period or next year when we come here again, we should be able to say that government gave this figure and we saw this and that, it should be specific and very targeted.
Very well. Francis, your take.
My question was